Already, I'm ready.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the September 21st, 2021 Operations Committee meeting. We have a very packed agenda this morning, so much that we've extended this meeting to end at 12:45. I ask that my fellow board colleagues to save your questions and our remarks until the end of each presentation. And for today's presenters, thank you so much for being with us. But I also ask that you stick close to your allotted 20-minute presentation time, really just sticking to the highlights and updates. And so if all hearts and minds are clear, we can get started with the first presentation.
I need to say something to you, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I will have to leave at 12:30. I have a student who's defending their dissertation and I'm the chair of their committee today, and I gotta move on out to get ready for that today. It's a big day at Morgan. It's still a big day at Morgan.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much for the update. And Mr. Gant, did you note that?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, we can get started with the capital improvement program. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, and I appreciate you moving this up so that it could be first. We have to present it at the City Planning Commission also at 12. So we turn right around from here and go right to that. So, so thank you. I'm Cindy Smith. I'm the Director of Facilities Design and Construction, and I'll be presenting the capital improvement plan for the year. We'll go through what the CIP is, how we prioritize projects, the status of previous projects, as well as our current goals for the CIP. And then we'll kind of touch on some funding sources, some additional funding sources and what we do with the local CIP, and then the timeline and the overall where we go from here. Next slide, and next. So for anybody who is not aware, the CIP is a 6-year plan that identifies the public school construction needs. So for this year, we're submitting currently the FY 2023. We do put in some anticipated requests for the next 5 years as well. And it is submitted to the IAC, the Interagency Commission on School Construction. And our capital projects include everything from educational initiatives to facilities priorities and addressing our facility needs, which are tremendous. Next slide. So just in context, because we have a lot of acronyms and a lot of plans that we put together, especially on the operations side, we have the CEFMP, which is the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan, which takes into account things like enrollment and includes the Office of Achievement and Accountability and enrollment choice and transfer and data from pupil transportation and the Office of Transportation. It includes all of that in kind of a master plan that shows where the district is and the status of all of our buildings. And then using that as well as the comprehensive maintenance plan, which was actually just presented to the board recently, I think at the last board meeting, as well as the annual review of schools in the annual portfolio process. We use all of those inputs to create the CIP, which is then the capital program needs, as the most emergent needs typically is what comes up in the CIP at each time. Next. So I did want to slide this slide in here. This is from the CMP presentation, so you guys should have seen it before, but I think it really correlates how everything ties together. You know, capital and maintenance are really interrelated. We use the information from maintenance to create the CIP, and the CIP then feeds into the maintenance program, because then the maintenance program has to incorporate all of the information from the capital projects. We provide things such as called the BMP, which is a building maintenance plan. So for every project we do, we provide information over to maintenance then so that they can then continue to maintain that system as it continues to operate over its life cycle, to then start the life cycle over again at the end of its life cycle to put in the CIP. And, you know, so it's a very circular process. Next slide. As part of that, again, this is another one from the CMP, but it's worth repeating. We currently have a maintenance budget of approximately almost $39 million, and a capital budget of about $53 million, and that includes what we get from the state and from the city. But we have a current replacement value of all of our facilities of $5 billion, and per all of the all of the reports out there, that should require $150 million a year in maintenance and a $200 million capital budget every year to be able to maintain that replacement value portfolio. And as you can see, with that combined annual budget and the combined needs, we have a deficit of about $258 million every year that we are, we're trying to get through as best we can, but we'll never make up that difference because that's a tremendous difference. So really, to properly maintain and update all of our physical infrastructure, we do need a huge infusion of both maintenance and capital dollars. It's not just one or the other. Even if we can replace it all, then we can't maintain it all if we don't get maintenance infusion as well. Next slide. Next. So to prioritize our capital projects, because there are so many needs, we actually have gone back to our facility condition assessments. As you might be aware, we did the Jacobs report many years ago, and then as we put everything into our CMS system, the computerized maintenance system, CMMS system, computerized maintenance management system, there we go. We did another facility condition assessment with EMG, and they rate all of the systems in all of our buildings on a rating of excellent through failed through a variety of categories between paving, through HVAC, roofing, electrical, structural, pretty much every major building system. So what we've done is we basically reverse sort. So we start with the systems that are failed or porous and the poorest conditions, and then those are the ones that we put up for priority to prioritize in the CIP, and we'll work our way through the projects in that way. Next slide. So we identify those projects, we pull the ratings out, we score them, and when we score them, we have maintenance come in and get involved in what is the, what are the actual conditions? Have they done any work that isn't incorporated in the facility condition assessment? Has there been any other updates to it? Do we know anything from the annual school reviews that might impact if we should put something in the CIP? And then that list then gets prioritized, then also using the financial scoring, like we put a financial implication on financial price on each one to be able to figure out where it all is going to fall and how many projects we might be able to get in each year, knowing what our target is and what we typically get from the state, which is roughly 30-ish million dollars, depending on the year. And so all of that all goes into creation of the CIP and how projects are prioritized in the CIP. Next. So just getting into previous projects and where we stand with everything that we're currently working on. There's a variety of fund sources that we're currently working through at the moment. We had 15 million HVAC funds, which I know has been mentioned in the newspaper recently, but I just want to mention that this money was given to us to address heating issues, not cooling issues, heating issues from the winter that we had, a lot of the heating failures that we had that year. And this was to address like really emergent, what were the biggest priorities for heating. And that was a $15 million fund project. There's still one in design. We're going to end up putting in some additional money from our local capital to be able to complete that project because its needs are greater than what was originally established. But everything else is either in construction or complete from that. In addition, we're working through Healthy Schools Facilities Funds projects, the FY20 projects. We have completed all 5 of those projects. We did rescind one because of the status of the building. And then we're still working on FY19, 20, and 21 capital projects and beginning 22. So everything from 19 is in construction or construction contract award, same with 20, 21 and 22, we're still in design for most of those, but we have started construction for a few of the 21 projects. Next slide. So our big ones, the major projects are what is taking up the majority of the CIP this year. As you may recall, we have completed Holabird and Graceland. They're still on here because they are still in demolition phase of the existing buildings. But as soon as those existing buildings are demolished and the site is complete, they'll roll off of here. But we also have 4 major projects that are in design right now that have 3 of which have received a first funding allocation from the CIP. So we have Armistead Gardens, which is a renovation and major addition. That building is about 214% utilized. It's got 2 very large portables. There's way more kids in portables than there are in the actual main building there now. So we are in design at this point, with a planned occupancy of August 2024. And Marie Fairing is the next one. As you may recall, we purchased the adjacent building, the church. It's a historic church and an annex, because that building is also over 200% utilized and has a fairly large portable on its site as well. The annex will serve grades pre-K to 1, so it'll be like a standalone little early childhood learning center. So we purchased the property. We're in design for that. The historic church will be kept. The annex will be demolished and rebuilt to be a school appropriate facility. And we currently have a planned occupancy on that of August 2023. Next slide. And then we also have an allocation currently to start, and we've started design on Furley. Furley, as you may remember, is a replacement building because we had to swing those students out of that building due to some structural failures. So the students are currently housed in the Thurgood Marshall building with Vanguard. And so we are in design right now for the replacement building to completely replace, demolish and replace that existing building, again with a planned occupancy of August 2024. And then in addition to that, we have Northeast. Northeast at this time has not received an allocation from the state. It has been put forward, it has been requested, but they have not given us any funding to date on that one. So we are still waiting on that, but we are moving forward with the design. This is a renovation. It's more like things like science labs, art rooms, as well as systems in Northeast to be able to get it ready for Vanguard to move into theirs. The plan is, of course, for Furley to move into their building, for Vanguard to move into the Northeast building, and then the Thurgood Marshall building has been on our Exhibit 6, our surplus list for a while. So we would be vacating that building to be able to surplus the Thurgood Marshall building. Currently, if they give us funding this year, we'll have a planned occupancy at the Northeast building of August 2023. That might slip a little bit. The goal is at least by the time that Furley is out as well. So, you know, that like target would be no later than 2024. And that just depends on the funding allocations from the state. In addition, we're putting forward planning requests for the next 2 major projects. These 2 are in alignment with the CTE plan, the CTE program realignment that the district has been working on. In Edmondson, we are, trying to remove the CTE spaces from the West Side Skill Center and actually put them in the Edmondson building, as well as then do a couple of systemics within Edmondson, so that everything would be within Edmondson and the West Side Skill Center building would be surplused. And then at Ben Franklin is already actually overutilized. It's just a little over 100% at this point, so it's not like to the extreme of some of our other buildings. But it also is a planned location for several CTE programs to move into. So what we're doing right now is we're putting these in for the CIP for planning. So what that does is alert the state that they're coming, that we would be requesting funding in next year's CIP. And it starts to put out a timeline for the state for them to be able to, prepare for these projects coming forward and to start to review them and things to get them ready. The exact funding for both of these is still to be determined because we have to just tighten up the scope and things like that. But we do know that the majority of it is the CTE. The CTE alignment is the impetus for it. Next slide, please. So our key goals for this year's CIP were, of course, the 4 major projects because we have some funding already allocated. We have significantly overcrowded schools. We're trying to address some major issues. After that, the projects in the CIP are being submitted were the ones that were not funded last year that were submitted. So basically anything that got what they call either a B or a C status, they felt like they were justifiable projects, but that there wasn't funding last year. So those projects, of course, then were repeated and put forward again in this year's CIP. And then we have, of course, the 2 major projects I just talked about, Ben Franklin and Edmondson, as well as we've added 2 systemics. We've been doing quite a bit of work at Marianne Winterling with its merger with Lockerman Bundy, and to finish up that building and bring all the systems up there. We're proposing the fire alarm, and then in Edmondson, the pool structure is leaking, so we need to do some renovations in that pool structure to be able to continue to use the pool. Right now, it does leak pretty consistently. So we've added those 2 projects as well to the new project list. Next slide. So our project request breaks down like this. It's 6 major projects with 16 systemic projects, 3 HVAC, 1 boiler, 6 elevators, 1 fire safety. Multi-systemics are projects where we've combined systems. So it could be an HVAC and a roof. It's basically so that if we're in there touching stuff, you might as well touch as much as it needs to be done so that you can cut back on costs like mobilization and things like that. It's a little more efficient to do that. And then 1 pool, 1 roof, 2 roofs, and 1 structure for a total request in FY 2023 of 22 projects. Next slide.
My apologies.
Yep.
Could you start wrapping up your presentation, please?
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So there are questions then?
I get this, Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
1 second, Commissioner Baldema. Cindy, I didn't want you to like stop.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But, finish your last point.
I thought she was stopping. That's why I raised my hand.
Yeah, that's why.
No, it's okay. I just want you to, start rapping.
Got it. Okay,
Can just in the interest of time, and I know that we have time. I mean, we don't have time. You want me to ask a question instead of going back later, so I can get the question out, so we don't have to go back. How about that? How do you want us to handle this, Madam Chair?
Cindy, was there anything that was absolutely pertinent that you wanted to hit on before she asked her question?
The only other things I would say that I wanted to hit on, I mean, we did have a slide about the air conditioning, but I think we've talked about that before.
We always need to talk about that.
Exactly. That's why it's in here. I did want to add that there's a Healthy Schools fund for this year again. So we are submitting several major, if you keep going through a few more, there'll be 1 more slide. So here we talk about, or the previous slide, we talk about the existing Healthy Schools. There is a new Healthy Schools facility funds for FY 22. So we're submitting those this week. And so there'll be another 6 HVAC projects going in on that. So that's part of the reason why we can focus on the major projects in the CIP. And then HB1, which I know everybody is curious about, is of course the high school plan. And then the last biggest thing is just, the timeline. This goes into the state next week. So it'll come to the board and then go into the state next week. And we will find out 100% allocations in May. And I think those are the big highlights, unless you want to get detailed into the air conditioning.
Okay, I don't want to get into details of the air conditioning right now because I think I'd beat that
right
dog to death. But I still need to get more information. But when you back at slide 14. You went so fast that I was going like this. I was trying to catch up with you to be determined. You got Emerson High School up there, and
Yes.
They've been having issues with their roofing for a long time. And we talk about that a little bit. Then you said something about they're moving the students from the west side over to the Emerson building. Could you tell me? You went so fast that I got lost in that shuffle. What are we doing with Edmondson?
So in the CTE plan that has been presented, and I can't remember exactly when that was presented, but part of the plan is to take the CTE programs out of the West Side Skills Center and move them into Edmondson. So
is there enough space for that?
Yes, there is.
There's enough. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, that building is only it's about 60% utilized. It is actually quite a bit underutilized. There is definitely enough space. We've laid it all out. It does need some renovations though to accommodate those spaces.
Right.
Like those are specialty programs. So it's in the CIP then to be able to do those renovations for those CTE programs. Their roof is starting construction. The PO was just issued to the contractor yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting a new roof right now.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yep, you're welcome.
Commissioner Reed, did you have anything?
Yes. Cindy, great job. I really like slides 5, 7, and 18. You don't have to go back to them, but I mean, they were helpful for me in terms of just getting the big overview. So I guess when you want to tighten it for the board, make sure you go over those
5, 7,
pages.
18. Got it. You got it. Okay.
And I guess another thing, keep rolling to the addendum.
Oh, yes. Yeah, project lists are
because
included in the addendum. Yes.
because what I guess the point I'm trying to make here is a lot of people have questions about air conditioning. They have questions about the school safety and also other factors. And you have 5 pages on air conditioning in here. You have 5 pages on school safety. So people fail to realize how important the addendum is. But this is really helpful for, especially for the people who have problems with safety and also air conditioning right now.
Yes. Thank you.
I think I'll just close out and mention, Cindy, I feel like in previous presentations, you've listed the B and C projects, and they're not listed in this one. Could you provide the list of B and C projects to the board, please?
Sure, definitely.
That would be really, really helpful.
Yes, we can do that. Okay.
Thank you so
Commissioner Rob, sorry, this is, you said B and C project? I didn't hear it.
Yes.
B and C, okay.
Yes. Thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Good luck at your 12 o'clock.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation will be fiscal year 23 budget milestones.
You're on mute, Courtney.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Good morning, everyone. I'm Courtney Desabay, Special Assistant and Acting Budget Director for Finance. So today's presentation is supposed to be our official kickoff of the FY23 budget process. I know how much fun we had with last year's budget process and how much you guys couldn't wait to get started with the new one. So here we are. What this is essentially the milestone calendar, the major milestone events during the process. And I'll go through this pretty quickly, but there is a little addition that wasn't on the agenda I want to talk about after, which is a little bit about Kerwin. I know it's not what this update was about, but we'd kind of be a little remiss if we don't touch on it a little bit. But in terms of the calendar, where we are right now is getting into the enrollment adjustment process, which is officially the closeout of the fiscal year 22 process. It's where we take the enrollment numbers that we're getting now in the fall and updating the funding for this current year, FY22, based on those enrollment figures. Some of the other changes in this calendar, we expect this year to have our state revenue projections a little bit earlier, and that is Kerwin related. They're giving us some of the numbers that we're going to be using for developing our FY23 budget a little earlier than they normally would because of the circumstances. Our school budget allocations and budget launch are on the same time, start of February, as they normally are, as well as the tool openings. We compressed the timeline a little bit, and part of that is based on some of the feedback from last year. If you guys recall, we had just about 2 weeks between the FY22 budget presentation and then when the board was asked to vote on the presentation. Down at items 13 and 14, we've created a 4-week gap between the initial presentation and the board vote per feedback to create more time for the board to examine the budget, ask questions about the budget, get questions answered from the community, provide feedback on the budget items. Other than that, the timeline is fairly similar to what we had presented last year. So as I mentioned, FY23 is the first year of the new Kerwin funding formula. And it's a pretty big deal for us. Normally this is the point in time in the year where we start thinking about and planning for the budget, but we started that, a few months ago because of Kerwin. We expect, a cash infusion or revenue infusion about $200 million, which is pretty significant. But along with that, there's a lot of changes to how we distribute the funding and how we report the funding in the school. So kind of think of it in 3 ways. There's changes in our planning for revenue, changes in our planning for allocation, and then changes in our planning for reporting. So we have some work groups that we've been working with in terms of developing budget plans for the different segments. There are 5 main sessions or subsections, I would say, pertaining to Kerwin and the content areas that we're going to be engaging different officers on for their feedback. But also making sure that everyone is up to speed on what the requirements are within each individual office for Kerwin reporting, and Kerwin distribution. So it's an ongoing process. Part of it is, a little limited by the information that we have, in the sense that some of it is still in transition. There's still updates to some of the information. Especially on the reporting side, there are subgroups and committees that need to be in place for the reporting that aren't fully in place yet. We are working with the state, hand in hand on that, as well as other districts, in developing the information in preparation for Kerwin modeling. We also are engaged with some third parties that help us with the planning and dissemination of information with regards to Kerwin, and strategizing and project planning for Kerwin. So it's a full-blown process and project. It's going to be a massive change in terms of how we do budgeting in city schools. But in terms of the actual timeline of the process, is still going to be similar. Some of the sub-items within the project plan will be changed, but it's not shifting the timeline specifically. We're still operating on the same timeline. One of the major changes that's going to be upcoming, and this year will be the first year of that transition, is how we visualize fair student funding going forward. The district has always maintained student-first approach to how we fund, and that's not going to change. Kerwin does not change that, just to be clear. But we have to think about what that means on the reporting side, and how we communicate that back to the state with regards to the funding that we receive. So it is a multi-year approach. In addition to the fact, if you guys recall, we had agreed to update the funding model at least once every 4 years. So we're coming up on that 4-year period where it's time to update the fair student funding model. Our last update was in FY19. So part of that is going to be worked on through this transition through Kerwin as well, so that these two things are in alignment. So looking at how we receive funding, how we distribute funding, maintaining the parameters of equity that we've had over the last few years with concentrations of poverty and gifted and talented, and some of the other weights that we've had in the funding. And building that in with the new Kerwin legislation is a part of major work that we're going through right now. I know I've been asked to keep it brief, so I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I guess my question is, there's a litany of things right here. It's 15 milestones. I'm sure all are important. But me as an operations committee member, are there any things more important than 4 and 11 for this committee?
The most important things for this committee, well, and one thing I didn't mention, and I should have before, you guys are where we're going to continue to do our monthly budget updates, and we're going to tie those in with Kerwin as well. So you're going to be kept abreast of the Kerwin development project plan along the way. So just so that you're aware of that, it's not listed here as an item on this milestone calendar because it's not a development item, but it's going to be part of our process going forward. But the most important things, I think, are item number 4, thinking about the budget allocations, which stems from the Kerwin revenue model development and how much funding we're going to receive and how it's going to be allocated. And the other thing I want to highlight is it's a subtle thing, but the SFC meetings, the School Family Council and community engagement. Okay. Even as we add funding for Kerwin and we go through the funding process for Kerwin, our internal process for city schools has always been to engage our community members, and that's not going to change. So I know the board we would discuss this before we knew Kerwin was a factor. We always said, even if we think about changing the funding model or how we do things, one of the things we want to maintain is our community and family engagement. So that's still going to be a main point for us in this development cycle. The other things would be the budget collaboratives. They're going to be a lot more involved this year than they normally would because it's not status quo. So we'll be working with the offices internally to make sure that we're having all the information on hand that we need, and we're really walking schools through the process even more so than we normally would. So there's going to be a lot of interaction and back and forth with schools and with our community members during this year's process, probably a little bit more so than normal. And that's probably what I want the board to be cognizant of. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. We just have to make sure we're controlling how we disseminate the information, everyone's getting the same information, and that we're asking all the right questions. And I know you guys will be pushing on us for that and helping us, sort of align that with how you want to see things. And I'm not saying that facetiously. For example, during our process last year, we had some feedback from you guys in terms of developing our budget information in such a way that it can be disseminated by different groups or digested by different groups. And we came up with like the infographics and the one pagers. So that's already something we sort of incorporated into the Kerwin budget development process, where we're putting together infographics, community digestible pieces of information that are targeted to specific audiences, that explain how the Kerwin process works, explain the changes in funding, the 5 subgroups and so forth. And even within the departments that we'll be working with internally that specialize in the different areas, making sure that information is also very visual, readily available, easy to digest. So we're taking some of that feedback, and we will welcome more of that feedback from you. This year it's more so than any other year. It's going to be different. It's going to be new, and it's going to be uncomfortable in some ways. So we want to make sure we're addressing as many concerns as we can during the process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney, for that. I just want to say really quickly, and then I'll hand it off to you, Chief Doherty, that I really appreciate you lifting Kerwin in this presentation. Kerwin as a system, Kerwin, the language should be embedded more naturally, more frequently into future presentations, as well as the community engagement sessions. Something that I think we should all start processing and understanding is that Kerwin is not just a founded best practice, but it's now the law. And so It's not us just attempting to do a best practice, but we are now being held to compliance for the law. And so as we're starting to consider what those changes look like for early childhood education, for recruitment and teacher salaries, even for our college and readiness programs, that is all a part of this budget season. And so as we see these future presentations, I know that this committee especially will be looking for that, especially around the community engagement part. So getting our various stakeholders to understand what those law ramifications, what those legal changes look like for our system and for students. So I really appreciate you lifting that, Courtney. Chief Doherty.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. I just want, I know we're probably close to time, but I did want to help answer Commissioner Reed's question, and also point out that what you kind of already have, which is that, the word Kerwin isn't on this particular set of milestones, because the milestones will kind of are the general process milestones, but it's throughout this. And a big part of this, and Director Desabey said it, we got the message from the last budget cycle that that the time at the end felt, my words, but a little bit rushed, and that decision makers didn't always have the time that they wanted at the end. So because there's no free lunch, what we did was we highlighted, or we extended the period in between 13 and 14. So that's a full 4 weeks as opposed to 2 weeks. And Courtney used the term compressed. Those 2 weeks kind of come out of the process, before that. And so we will be incorporating all of the Kerwin law in a compressed period of time. And the other kind of placeholder I'll put in to Commissioner Reed's question is, as far as what can the Ops Committee do, even more than it's already done, is we know that community engagement has always been important, but as you mentioned, Commissioner Roberts, Kerwin makes it like community engagement squared. And members of the community are already giving lots of engagement, but it's more on the board and staff to help take that input, whether it's delivered in an R3 session or whether it's delivered in a normal budget session, because a lot of folks, understandably, they want to give input about XYZ. They're not necessarily too concerned whether it's in the form of an R3 meeting or whether it's in the form of a budget meeting. They're not on the hook to know the differences between those funding streams. So we're already getting huge amounts of input from the R3 process, which is of course ARP, not Kerwin, but it's all to the same goal. So that was another overlay that we wanted to give on the voiceover here. But we're trying to respond to the directives we got from the board for more time between the first budget presentation and when the decision makers can approve it. And also, like we did last year, if there are many things that get identified during the process, we did make changes to what the budget proposed. It is always better to get those inputs earlier rather than later, but We heard your input, and in this first big year of Kerwin, $236 million, we're going to continue to look to the Ops Committee to help guide us through this process. And thank you for letting us bring up Kerwin as much as we have in this Milestone Calendar update.
Absolutely. And I think something else that bubbled up while you were speaking, and this is just something for you all to marinate on as we are going through this process this year, is that I think it would be really helpful in simplistic, plain language as we move forward or even further into the year to add some more simplistic anecdotal stories around how these adjustments in Kerwin will affect school communities on the ground level, so that family stakeholders are able to see what that looks like for their school community in dollars and cents.
Okay.
If getting an art teacher, if it's potential to hire or procure more resources, I think that would be really meaningful, and we haven't particularly done it in that way before. But with this influx, the larger conversation is around the influx of money, and so what does that mean? I'm going to challenge you in that way for us to keep that conversation going. Also, just to maintain the sense of continuity, what I did not see for this presentation was around the district priorities and rationale. Could we speak to, just for continuity purposes, around the budget presentation for today? Or if you could update it for me after today's presentation. But we do want to maintain continuity in that way for all of the presentations to offer what.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Forgive us. We did do that in the preparation. I probably shouldn't guess, but my recollection is that this responds to strategic priority number 3, the connection to state-of-the-art facilities, modern facilities, but please forgive the oversight. That is on I thought it was in the prep materials, but I failed to put it on that document.
Got
and
it.
You're right, we need to incorporate that into our practice as just a matter of course, and we will.
It's just a gentle reminder.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Commissioner Bondima, did you have anything? We have we're doing good on time.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You fine? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chief Dodery and Courtney.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, we can move on to our next presentation a few minutes early. Teacher and principal pipeline. Oh wait, did I mess that up? No, it's teacher and principal pipeline. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners.
Oh, good. I saw him. Good morning, Chief Grant Skinner.
Good morning, Commissioner. We have multiple team members here for this presentation. I will get us started. I'm Jeremy Grant Skinner, the Chief Human Capital Officer, and we are happy to be here today for what has in recent years been our semi-annual presentation on teacher and principal pipelines. Picking up where the last presentation left off, we know that having a robust system of pipelines and pathways for staff members across various instructional roles in city schools connects to multiple board priorities, including especially priority 2, which is focused on ensuring that we find and hire and support and grow great people across positions all across the district. We know that when we have thoughtful and meaningful pipelines and pathways for our employees, that it also ensures that we support priority 1 of getting rigorous instruction to all of our students, and priority 7 to increase equity across the levels of our organization through our policies and our practices. I'm of course here with team members from the Human Capital Office. We have responsibility for leading our work in the district around pipelines and pathways. And I wanted to highlight that really bookended by a couple of district-wide documents that are guiding us, those being the blueprint and our recent Reconnect, Restore, Reimagine recovery plan. We've been guided within the Human Capital Office by a series of strategic documents, including our multi-year strategic plan for our office, the recommendations of the Black Teacher Recruitment and Retention Working Group from a couple of years ago. And we reported to the board earlier this year on some of the interim impact of our work back through a report that we provided in January. As we are guided by those things, there are a lot of indicators of positive impact from the work within our strategic plan, including things that are pretty operational. We recently highlighted for the full board that we were anticipating, and now I can confirm that we have 3 years in a row where we opened with fewer than 100 teacher vacancies, something the district hadn't done before, and something that reflects a 99% fill rate of our positions. We just had the second year in a row of record high teacher retention rates. And then when we look more specifically, we've seen increasing rates of retention of our highly effective teachers, more specifically as well. For 3 years in a row, we retained every single one of our principals who was rated highly effective. We've been increasing the number of Black teachers in the district and the percentage of all of our teachers who are Black. And we've been able, in support of the blueprint and other strategic work of the district, to support the expansion of the numbers of people in some very strategic roles like literacy coaches and wholeness specialists, but also leadership roles like assistant principals and teachers. We have more than 200 additional teacher positions today in the district than we did just 3 years ago. Wanted to give that grounding to say, from our office's lens, we've been doing a lot of things that are operational and where we've made significant progress. And we want to talk to you today about how the strategic side of this with pipelines and pathways is really, we're really trying to fit it all together. So this slide here, I will take a moment to orient you because this will, we're going to show you a few versions of this over the next few minutes to talk about how we are trying to even more so and better connect the dots between various programs that we have in place in the district that relate to the pipelines of how someone first enters the district in a role and pathways of what is available to them to continue to grow and prepare where they're interested for another role in the future while they're in those roles. So on this slide, you see a progression of different types of instructional roles in the district. So roles that are either paraeducators or like paraeducators on the left, and then moving to the right to teacher-like roles, to assistant principal, to principal. And under each of these columns, you see in blue some of the pipelines that lead someone to enter the district in that role. So for example, ways that someone can be selected in the district to become a paraeducator at the very left. They could have a certain number of college credits that qualify for them to become a paraeducator. They also could pass an assessment called the Parapro assessment that could be another pathway into that role. So across all of these roles, you can see the various ways that someone can enter into the role. In the pink or red, you see that once someone is in that role, these are ways that someone can go beyond the standard role to expand their influence, to have more impact, to grow, and again, to prepare for potential promotion into some other role along this continuum. On the next slide, we want to emphasize that there's not one path that someone can, does, or should follow as they're moving across this continuum in the district. So this doesn't really work like you're a paraeducator and then you immediately and always then move into a teacher role, and then you always like go from there to assistant principal and from there to a principal. We recognize that there are various paths that individuals take. This is because we know that employees have unique talents, interests, experiences, and that means that a one-size-fits-all career ladder is really insufficient and not realistic. What we are showing here is there are various ways that staff members can move across and between roles. So I'm going to name the sort of color coding that we have here. So you see a couple of horizontal pink arrows. What we're showing here is that once someone is in a role, there is a way for them to take on some other responsibilities or another kind of role that doesn't change their official job title, but brings them into ways that they can expand their influence, they can have more impact, and they can grow. So the example under the principal column of the solid pink line is someone can be a principal, and if they choose to and are selected to be identified as a transformational principal, their job title is not changing, but they are taking on some additional responsibilities that will help them lead more and grow. Second, you see some solid blue lines here that are vertical, and this just shows that once someone is in a role, there are usually multiple opportunities they have to grow and expand their impact. So in the teacher column here, you see that there are teacher-like roles where people are expanding their influence, like being a multi-classroom leader through opportunity culture, or being a literacy coach, or being a lead teacher. And people can and do sometimes move across those to expand the types of experiences that they have. The final thing on here is you see the dotted pink lines show that it's also not linear. Someone can move from one thing to another that isn't like from this step immediately to this step. And we know that happens in people's experiences based on their interests and, again, their talents. I want to share a couple of quick examples of what this can look like for individualized paths and how it can be connected to individual programs that we have in place. This shows an example of someone who came into the district as a paraeducator, and then in that role became connected to our PSRP to teacher programming that we have relaunched in partnership with the Baltimore Teachers Union to prepare them for eventually becoming a teacher. And we know that this can lead to someone, once they earn a bachelor's degree, to be eligible to become a teacher in the district, sometimes through our conditional teacher certificate pathway. So you can see one example here of a way that someone can move through the district and across this continuum. The next example here shows someone who's been in the district for a longer period of time. The path that you see here is someone who came to the district first as a teacher through an alternative certification program. They eventually expanded their work by becoming an educational associate, another teacher-like role, and then were promoted to become an assistant principal, participated in another one of our programs, the AP Accelerator program, and then were again promoted to be a principal. And then, as I shared before, could be eligible to become a transformational principal where they're working with projects or schools beyond their own. So again, just an example of someone's very personalized path through the district. The final thing I want to show is that even while we're recognizing the diversity of pathways that people can follow, we are trying to be thoughtful about how we connect some of our residency programs with some of our reach extending programs across this continuum. So the example that I showed here that we want to streamline for cases where people are really interested in this kind of pathway over the course of their career is to look at those individuals who are coming into the district through the Urban Teachers Program, where they are first a teacher in training. They then become a teacher. We know that through our opportunity culture work, they could then expand their influence by becoming a multi-classroom leader. Our multi-classroom leaders are going to be a great source of potential candidates for our principal residency program. And when someone goes through that principal and training program, our goal is that they can then transition into a principal role. And we now have a couple of examples in the district where excellent principals have stepped into a role as a multi-school leader. And this is a continuum that we believe is one example of the way that we're connecting the dots between some of the programs that we have. Having highlighted that, I'm going to turn it over to some team members. The last thing I will share is that there are a few of the specific pipeline or pathway programs that we're going to take time here today to talk about in a little more depth. And I think I'm turning it over first to Mr. Morant.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. My name is William Morant, and I'm the Director of Talent Management, and I'll be taking us through the next few slides along with my counterpart, Diane Sellers, the Director of Recruitment. Here on this slide, you will see each year how we employ a number of different strategies to evaluate the who and how of what candidates we recruit to create a large, diverse pool of candidates to fill our vacancies. This chart shows the number of teachers hired since 2004 by pathway, and by pathway, I mean by Teach for America, Urban Teachers, Baltimore City Teaching Residency, and other programs, along with our traditional teachers that we use to make sure that every classroom has a fully qualified staff member in place to instruct our kids. We'll be going a little bit more in depth throughout these slides to discuss the international teachers as well as the virtual learning program teachers that were introduced this year to make sure, again, our kids have qualified instructors. Based on year-over-year data, and this year what we were aiming for, we would have needed to hire nearly 750 teachers to be fully staffed by day one. Typically, this presentation focuses on our 3 alternate programs, but we're going to share a little bit of higher level staffing data and introduce 2 new pipelines, which I've referenced before, which are international teachers, as well as the virtual learning program staff. This slide, you will be able to see our critical shortage areas or our highest need content areas, which are on trend and have remained consistent year over year with both local and regional trends. We were able to start this year with a trend of 3 years in a row of starting with less than 100 vacancies district-wide, in large part due to our recruitment pipelines, both internal and external. The arrows will highlight the areas that are still the highest need content areas with special ed, where we still have 24 vacancies, followed by math, foreign language, and then biology. As you can see, like these are the highest need content areas where we still have vacancies, and we're looking to consistently and aggressively work with school leaders in filling these positions to make sure that we can get to having a qualified teacher in every single classroom. One of the strategies that we employed was revised hiring practices for this academic school year. One of the biggest things that we focused on was opening up hiring for teachers in the middle of March and closing it by the end of July. What this did was create a sense of urgencies for school leaders and ILEDs as they worked in collaboration with us to fill vacancies. We were able to share week-over-week data with ILEDs to discuss noticeable trends, identify challenges, and highlight support areas where we're needed. And more importantly, we were able to get and set weekly goals, which allow us to see how we were doing overall and isolate schools that needed additional support.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Diane Sellers. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Selection. So first, I just want to highlight 3 of our alternate route programs that we typically highlight twice a year when we meet with you all. So those programs are Baltimore City Teaching Residency, Teach for America, and Urban Teachers. So each year, these alternative certification programs combine to provide more than 250 new teachers to our district. We rely on these programs to provide teachers in high need content areas such as special education, math, and ESOL. And here you can see a breakdown of how we strategically used certain funds in order to place these teachers. So for BCTR, we hired 86 teachers for this school year, and we leveraged concentration of poverty funds to place and support their current cohort of teachers. For Teach for America, We hired 82 teachers for this school year, and we leveraged both Title I and concentration of poverty to place and support 75% of the cohort in Title I schools and 25% in high schools with concentration of poverty. And urban teachers, we hired 84 teachers for this school year, and increased the centrally funded resident teachers to 79, with a total of 110 resident teachers for this upcoming school year. So as William mentioned, one of our new strategies for this year is hiring international teachers through the J1 visa process. We partnered with 2 organizations to hire international teachers on a J1 visa. The 2 organizations we partnered with are Trades and Professionals and Alliance Abroad Group. So both of these partners also partner with other large urban districts, Chicago Public Schools and Clark County Public School District, which is in Las Vegas, respectively. The J1 visa is a temporary visa. It's a cultural exchange visa, and it's valid for 3 to 5 years. And unlike the H1B, City Schools is not the sponsor of the visa. The 2 organizations that we partnered with, they are the sponsor. We are the employer. We hired 29 teachers. 27 of them are from the Philippines. 1 is from Turkey, and 1 is from Peru. And as you can see in this chart showing their placement, their content area placements, the vast majority were hired to fill high need content areas such as ESOL, math, science, and special education.
So one of the things that is also uniquely different about this academic school year was the introduction of a virtual learning program where there are 2 elementary school components of VLP East, of VLP West, along with a virtual learning program for secondary students. We employed a variety of innovative recruitment strategies to make sure that we could broaden the recruitment pool, since we had to staff roughly over 70 teachers with a total of 110 positions overall for the entire virtual learning program. We did recruitment efforts where we were ultimately able to hire teachers and staff from across 18 states throughout the country. We also targeted current City Schools employees who had indicated that they had planned to resign, many of them because they were moving out of state. We were able to engage them in a meaningful way and offer them the opportunity to teach 100% virtual for this upcoming academic school year. And we also allowed employees to transition from current school-based positions over to the virtual learning program to ensure that we had a good mix of internal and external staff, with an emphasis on internal staff that knew our kids, knew our systems, knew our schools, and will be ready to go on day 1 and really assist with bringing along the individuals we hired from out of state. Though marketed as a 1-year program, we are hopeful and plan to engage all of the virtual learning program staff, both teachers, paras, and other members, to see if we can create opportunities for them to move forward into next academic school year to continue along with City Schools. This concludes our portion, and now I'll turn it over to Zahara Valentine, our Director of Educator Pipelines and Induction.
Thank you, Will, for that introduction. I don't know if this was on purpose, but I am a byproduct of every single pipeline that was mentioned. So alternative certification, special educator, model educational associate, principal, resident principal. So everything that Chief Grant Skinner also went over, it was very encouraging to see. And we want to talk about 4 programs or 4 areas of work that we are working on for this upcoming school year. Our first piece is a parent-to-teacher pipeline. This was lifted up from the Black Teacher Recruitment and Retention Work Group. We are also focused on teacher to AP, assistant principal to principal, and resident principal to become a principal. Next slide, please. So for the parent-to-teacher program, we have partnered with Baltimore Teacher Union, Coppin State University, and Morgan State University. To be more specific, we are partnered with Coppin University for secondary credentialing and for Morgan State University for elementary. Again, we are focusing on uplifting one of the recommendations, and that is that every year we will ensure that 20 paraprofessionals become teachers by the end of each academic school year. We are building the structures and foundations this year. We look forward to providing an update about the rollout very soon. So we're really excited about this bucket of work. Our next piece of work is Teacher to AP. In this particular area, we are partnered with Loyola University and Towson University. Both of these institutions offer the Admin 1 certification, which is required to become an assistant principal in Baltimore City Schools. And so again, we're going to continue to support teachers and recruit teachers to go through cohorts through both of these universities. And we've already began the process this summer, and we look forward to giving you all an update about how many teachers are actually sitting in the cohorts from our department. Our next bucket of work, we are piloting a new program this year with new leaders. This is in alignment to our AP Accelerator program. After doing stakeholder feedback and looking at our own internal curriculum, we realized that new leaders, a lot of the information and a lot of the content that they were giving that was nationally normed would benefit our assistant principals who aspire to be principals. What we also did, we added a couple of layers. And one of them is that we not only are they going through new leaders in their screening, we also had an application process that required the principal to recommend the assistant principal and for the IOED to recommend the assistant principal. So far, we have 6 amazing candidates sitting in this pool. Overall, the feedback that we have received is that many feel pushed. Many feel like at this point in time, this has been some of the most rigorous professional development that they have received. An area for growth that we received was to make sure that we remain differentiating experience for assistant principals, and new leaders has been an amazing partner with making sure that they are taking the feedback and differentiating the experiences for assistant principals, since each assistant principal has a different experience with their school community and principals. And lastly, principal residency. So this year we are again still partnering with new leaders. We have 9 staff members. Many of the staff members are teachers. We have one from district level, and we also have an assistant principal that's serving as a resident at a different school site. And what has transformed from this piece, and a piece that we have enhanced that is new, is that we've also increased IOED screening to have them a part of the process. We've also required that every resident comes into the program with an Admin 1 endorsement. When we looked at the barriers and some of the challenges, the Admin 1 endorsement was something that we wanted to proactively implement for this upcoming school year. And then lastly, a part of the new leader screening is definitely focusing on new leaders' high quality instruction and instructional leadership activities. And again, we have some amazing pictures for you guys to see the folks. So if you would like a copy of that, we'll definitely send them over to you. But we are super excited about our buckets of work, and I'm super honored to serve alongside 4 amazing people: Tiffany Adams, Nakia Carter, Tracy Frazier, and then last but not least, Shanae Williams. So thank you all for allowing us to update you on these 4 buckets of work.
Commissioners, we anticipate that you have some questions for us, so want to answer those and have a question back for you, which hopefully you'll tell us here or in the future. And that is, we'd love to hear which particular pipeline and pathway components that are outlined here that we didn't talk about today you have the most interest in for future updates. Some of these are things that we've had the opportunity to talk explicitly with either a committee or the full board with about before, like our REACH fellowship, or like literacy coaches. But we definitely want to be responsive in the future for what is, again, has been a recurring presentation as we give you updates on different aspects of pipelines and pathways.
Thank you so much for the question. I will get back to you with that, Commissioner, Chief Grant Skinner. I think, I know for myself, I need to look at this a little bit more to answer that. So I will toss it to Commissioner Bondima. I see her hand up because I
Yes.
have a lot of feedback.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chief Grant Skinner, and your staff and committee. It was very interesting. I enjoyed every minute of it. Of course, I'd like to review it again because it's so much at one time. But the one question that I do have, and this is under your presentation, Chief Grant Skinner, back to the number of African Americans or Blacks have been hired. Could you go back to that slide? You showed percent. You showed back. I couldn't tell on my computer what the number slide was. So it was. You remember the one that you talked about, the percent of African. Where was that? African Americans who have been hired, and you said it was an increase. Yeah, there it is. A consistent increase in the number of Black teachers and percent of teachers who are Black. I'm a number person, and I know you probably heard this before. When you just put that number of Black teachers and the percent, it really confuses me. It really doesn't mean anything to me. But this is probably not the right time to get those numbers right, to us. But I would really, in the future, or would you please include the number of Black teachers and the number of the increase and the percent, because we still won't know how well we're doing until we see the numbers. So, and I think it's a great thing that we are increasing. And this is a question that we have all the time, and you've heard us ask the same question all the time. How many? Could you, I don't know if you had those numbers with you today, or if you could get those numbers, so we can get an idea, because it could be 100 and only moved up to 101, so we really would like to see those numbers. It's really important. And if you don't have it today, you can just send it to us, but in the future, could you just add those numbers in there?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Bundy. We absolutely can. And what I can say now is today, the percentage of our teachers who are Black or African American is 46%. That represents just over 2,300 of our teachers, so about 2,300. And that is a few hundred more than we had in the district 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I was just putting here as a bullet, like a reference to what we've shared elsewhere. I know that one of the things that I can reshare is a year ago we shared with the board some data at that point showing how the work that Ms. Sellers and Mr. Morant and others who are really focused on teacher recruitment and hiring are responsible for was a very dramatic change in trend of the percentage of new teachers each year who have been Black or African American. There's like a 10-year period where that number was in the 30%. And then now for 5 years in a row, that number has been just around 50%. Mm-hmm. And that translates, what we shared with you last year, is that translates to like 400 more Black teachers than we otherwise would have had if we had continued the prior trend. So appreciate like the interest in the exact numbers, and we can follow up to give more because it's actually a part of this team's work that where there has been like great progress that I know team members have worked hard to make happen.
I have one more question. You showed where you recruit a lot of our teachers from Morgan, Coppin, and Loyola and Towson. I would be very interested to know if you have the data or how many students that you have recruited from Morgan, all of the schools. How many students have you recruited from each of those schools? It would be very interesting because they all have teacher education programs, and we would like to know for all the hard work that the higher education is doing in getting our teachers employed and the tests that they have to take in order to become, become teachers. Could you please let us know at some point? I don't know if you have that data. Maybe you do. I don't know. Do you?
Yes, we can provide you with that data.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Reed.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to take too much time. I know we're going to clock. Great line when you said building culture, opportunity culture. I like that a lot when you said that one of your slides. Two things come to mind for me. Madam Chair can correct me and we can look at this later, but where, in terms of your presentation, where does teaching and learning begin and ops end? Because me being a numbers guy, it seems more like a teaching and learning presentation than an operations presentation. One. And I guess the other is probably more important for me in terms of the education is the VLP program. That's been really important during the COVID period. But what's the future and the vision for the VLP program in light of the transition to 3R or R3, whatever you guys want to call it, the reopening, and also future status? So how do we see VLP moving along in the future based on where it is now?
Thanks, Commissioner. I will. I'm gonna respond to your first thing first and say, I appreciate the question about like whether this is operations versus teaching and learning, and that's what I think we've actually this presentation has like actually bounced around a little bit. So there are years where we have presented on this exact topic to the Teaching and Learning Committee, and there are years, and including this presentation, where we're at the Operations Committee. And from my space, I will say, there's no like perfect place for it because it is definitely like at the border. So we're happy to follow the lead of the board chair and the committee chairs of where this best fits. And what I wanted to just take a moment to say is like Will Morant is here to present on this, and he may have some insight here, but I also just wanted to take a moment to say that the staffing success of our virtual learning program is really largely a result of direct work by that individual. So in coordination with our schools team and people who were selected to be principals and assistant principals in those programs, and just want to make sure I recognize fully the work that Will himself did to make that happen. Allison, I also saw you. I don't know if you were trying to jump in about the VLP question or the other question.
No, I thought you did such a good job on answering the question about the overlap between the two. There's an operational aspect to recruiting staffing and recruiting that is more an operational aspect, and then there's obviously a teaching and learning piece to the implications of that work. So it could go either place, and we'd be happy to move it. So that was all I wanted to weigh in on.
That's above my pay grade, so I'm just throwing it out there. And Will, the thing behind you over your head, I'm sure the chair of the committee would like to have that, but she can find her own.
I can tell you exactly where I found it, but I love it. I like to have colors in my office, hopes to like brighten up a little bit when I have visitors and just for my own day-to-day. And thank you, Jeremy, for the kind words. It really was a collaborative and team effort to make sure that we got the virtual learning program off the ground. What I can tell you, Commissioner Reed, is I don't know definitively what the long-term plan is, but we went into this knowing that we were doing it for this year with the potential of looking up to 3 years. And so what was important to us is when we engage candidates, whether they were internal or external, we let them know that while we can only commit to like a 1-year contract, so to speak, that there may be opportunities to expand this beyond the first year. So please keep the options open. One of the things that we talked about internally with Jeremy, Sarah Dill, our executive director, and also our counterparts in academics, is that midway through the year for us to begin engaging all of the staff that we've hired to start talking around what long-term plans look like beyond the end of this academic school year. Because if they've been able to establish relationships with kids, got systems and processes down pat, we don't want to lose them and turn them over only to have to rehire other or additional individuals to engage with our students that are going to remain in the virtual space. I think as it evolves, and continues to develop, we will figure out which way that we will go. We had a lot of learnings through this recruitment process because there's a lot of back end things that you can't account for, just like taxes, payroll, accessibility to technology. How do we support these teachers to make sure that it's successful from day one? And so we're trying to account for all of these things, fine tune them as we go throughout this academic school year, touch base and really reach out to people in a meaningful way since they are dispersed across the country, and talk about our successes, our challenges, but like what does this look like to kind of build on it year over year, knowing that we may have to have this virtual component moving forward. So as we kind of figure out how this will evolve and develop, we can definitely come back to this committee to share what plans are going to look like. But just to go back to your original question, again, it's just for the 1 year right now, but we do have aims and beliefs that we may need this 2 or 3 years out. Beyond that, I can't speak specifically, but we can provide updates as we have them.
You're muted.
Oh, that's good. 1 year commitment. I mean, I'm good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're gonna go over. Mr. Gant, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No, we don't.
Okay, because I want to ask my question. So first and foremost, with the district moving forward with planning for Kerwin blueprint for teachers and leaders, I really appreciated today's intentionality around adding those slides about the internal promotion process. So thank you so much for adding that. For slide 15, the alternative certification programs, also keeping in mind the Kerwin requirements for recruitment, onboarding, and professional development for teachers moving forward. How are we being intentional, or what considerations are on the table or being lifted as we enter recruitment season with these alternative certification programs? And as a board member, I would want to know what should we be noting about the future procurements coming from these vendors as we're considering what the requirements of Kerwin are asking for. And if that's a top-heavy question, you can absolutely submit that in writing, and I can move on to my second question.
Chair Roberts, what I will share first is even on the pathways side of this, the first thing you started saying made me realize that we were not specific about the fact that some of the pathways will be directed by some of what is in the Kerwin legislation. So when I think about our current career pathway for teachers that is negotiated, that is about the model teacher pathway or the lead teacher pathway, we know, and our union partners know, that there's impact of what is in Kerwin legislation around that. So we will be working together to figure out what the next iteration of that pathway, of our current pathways, might be, to the extent that the Kerwin legislation requires us to change. An example of that is, of course, the Kerwin legislation made national board certification a big part of how individuals move across the continuum. So that's something that we'll have to work into our local processes. On the side of alternative certification programs, I'm going to take you up on the offer of providing a little bit more in writing, and can talk with Ms. Sellers about this. The one thing I would say where you ended of like what to note about future procurements is I would just take the moment to say the first slide that Mr. Morant presented shows that in a state where there is still a shortage of people coming through traditional preparation programs, we know that we will continue to need alternative certification providers as well in order to meet our annual need for teachers. And this is even in moments like this where we have the best teacher retention we've had. We know we still needed to rely on every source that was out there. And Diane talked about what that looked like, even expanding to something like international teachers, which we haven't hired in many years. So I would just say, first, yes, you should expect that we will bring forward proposals to continue working with the vendors who provide alternatively certified teachers.
Got it. And I think you transitioned that really beautifully, because my next question was around slides 13 through 16, the language around new teacher hire, especially the international J1 visa hires. So can you speak to the COVID-19 implications around their onboarding experience in the district? And so while they were hired, some of them were not in classrooms at the beginning of the school year. So can you speak about their delayed onboarding experience? And as a parent and commissioner, the first thing that comes to my mind is how would that, or how does that disrupt a student's learning experience? I would be really interested for you to speak to that.
Thanks. So yes, there were some teachers among that group of. I see Diane. Maybe Diane's going to talk about this. So I will be very brief and then kick it to Diane. We cannot anticipate when there is an impact of COVID among any of our teachers, and we recognize that some of that group had to start later than the first day of school. These are our highest need positions that otherwise could have been a vacancy for the whole year. So we wanted to still move forward with these candidates, even as there were unanticipated delays with some of them. Diane, what do you want to add?
I just wanted to echo what you said. So when we first partnered with the organizations, almost a year ago. So the process with the organization started about a year ago. And none of us knew what the impact of COVID was going to be, not just in terms of the teachers physically getting here or being exposed to COVID, but also the impact that COVID was going to have on them having visa appointments in their home countries. So there were unanticipated delays that were experienced there with visa appointments happening in their home countries due to COVID. And then after those visa appointments were approved, them getting here, us wanting them to have a safe quarantining period of time, and then there being additional delays with the teachers being able to have Social Security Administration appointments, which is necessary to hire them so that they could be fully hired. There were a lot of unanticipated delays due to COVID. Unfortunately, as Chief Grant Skinner said, since most of these individuals are teaching in high need content areas, the alternative is not to have a teacher at all, particularly in the maths, where we still have vacancies, as Will said, even though they're the lowest that they've been in a while, we would otherwise still have vacancies in those areas, a lot more than what we currently do. So what we are going to do moving forward is, now that we don't know what the impact of COVID will be for next year, but starting even earlier with interviewing candidates, interviewing virtually to make sure that the candidates who we want to hire are ready to go even earlier this year to prepare for them to come here next year, and being able to quarantine if necessary, and being able to wait for Social Security Administration appointments so that they will be more likely to start day one.
And Commissioner Roberts, the only thing I will add is that as soon as we were aware of the delays, we began actively communicating with all school leaders, the ILEDs, as well as the school support managers. We try to provide weekly updates so that as the international candidates or teachers are available, that we are doing everything we can internally to expedite their processing, because we realize the impact of kids, especially at the beginning of the school year, but also the strain that it puts on principals and other staff members to kind of cover for those classes. So our team collectively is out doing school visits, and we are particularly targeting the schools where international teachers were slated to attend so that we can actually see what it is on the ground level, but also work with those principals to come up with creative ideas to create coverage for those classrooms, whether it be trying to identify a substitute teacher, maybe pulling an additional staff member in temporarily, and then working with our internal team to figure out how we can move these candidates through the process of getting their background checks done, getting them cleared, and getting them in the classroom as quickly as possible. I know myself, along with Diane, we try to send up updates on a weekly basis, and as principals reach out for circumstances that are really beyond anyone's control or something that is really, really challenging, we're trying to meet with them one-on-one, either virtually through a meeting or communicating via email to figure out how do we troubleshoot this issue so that the strain is not felt or is lessened by the kids, but it also doesn't put an undue burden on the school leader who is already dealing with a number of things of bringing kids back for the first time in 18 months.
I appreciate that. Just one more question and then we can jump. Will the district also be tracking retention around these teachers as well, the J1 visa teachers?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation and responding to all of our today's questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
we can prepare for the new Enterprise Resource Planning Project, or otherwise known as the ERP update?
Good morning. I'm Tommy Jones. I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer for the district. I, along with a lot of district staff, have been working on trying to plan for a new ERP. Chief Dougherty and Chief Grant Skinner sort of are my cohorts in this thing, so a lot of work have been put in this. And being conscious of time, I'm going to try to go through this very quickly please stop me to ask any question that you want to ask, but I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can. All right. So this project aligns with Strategic Priority 3, which is basically to modernize our facilities and the resources that we use to operate this the school district. We are trying to replace the current enterprise financial system that we have, which was implemented back in 1998 and is reaching end of life. It is the source of many of the problems that we complain about with the data that we have in terms of financial or HC, onboarding, applicant tracking, all of those things. We're doing it with a new modern integrated solution. Everybody wants to integrate the one-stop shop stops all. We looked for that, but that is not what is out in the market. You have to pick the best and figure out how to make it work. We will be modernizing business processes. That's a big part of what we'll do. A big part is improving the data analysis. And then will be a huge step forward in providing a single source of truth for financial and human capital data throughout the district. Next slide. The expectation of the new ERP is to cover these basic areas: financials, your standard general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed assets, etc. In human capital, we're looking at human capital management, position management, employee benefits, performance management, onboarding, those types of things. We also want to look at better data analytics and reporting, dashboarding, and then integration with the various ancillary software packages. Next slide. Okay, keep going. The process itself is 5 phases. First phase is to do the systems need assessments, which started back March of 2020. Then we developed an RFP. We went through a very, very rigorous vendor selection process, and we're now currently in contract negotiations. And then the final phase, with the approval from the board, we will move into implementation. Next slide. The evaluation and selection process it's very simple. We went through and looked at all the functional requirements, documented them, produced a list, worked with procurement and legal to develop the RFP, all standard stuff. We had 8 vendors who proposed. The selection committee shortlisted it down to 5, and we had over 4 weeks of vendor demonstration, trying to make sure that we saw every part of the system and think through and discuss jointly how it fit into what we were doing. We came up with a short list of 3 best fit vendors. Next one. We completed our initial due diligence, had some more demonstrations, did reference checks, virtual sites visits, all the things you want to do to try to be absolutely sure you're making the best decision. Never a perfect one, but always the best one. The selection committee did a technical and final financial evaluation and conducted a BAFO, a second round of best and final offers. We then notified a combination of AST Oracle, so it is the Oracle system, which is what we have today, but the much, much upgraded one, along with a vendor called AST, who has done a number of school systems using the Oracle system. We also select Kronos, which is a very well-known timekeeping and payroll management system. And we are in the midst of contract negotiations as we speak. Next one. The effort involved in this, I thought, was very important to highlight. When I talked to Chief Jeremy and Chief Chris, and we were discussing this, very few people understand how much effort goes into this type of project. We figure there's over 5,000 person hours of city school staff that's dedicated to this. That was 70 staff doing the whole process, over 15 months, 1,500 hours of RFP requirements, trying to make sure we understood what our real need was. We had over 900 person hours of due diligence activities, just trying to be sure we weren't just being, forgive my language, but hoodwinked, by just something pretty on the screen. And we enlist the help of an outside consultant to help us guide us through this process and make sure we were taking all the appropriate steps. Next. Okay, our recommendations. We're coming up with the new recommendation. I keep fighting with everybody about the phrase ERP, which is really a manufacturing phrase. We're really looking at a integrated information system. It is focused on the financials, all the financials we listed in the beginning, your standard set, general ledger, accounts payables, budget, etc. We're looking at human capital with position management, benefits. And if you look at the color coding here, you will see that the learning management system was not a system that was available to us in this combination of Oracle and Kronos. The talent acquisition didn't have all the functionality that we needed. But still, the combination of Oracle, the vendor AST, and Kronos was the best combination that we could come up initially. We also are going to get a lot better data analytics and reporting and dashboarding, even some accessibility and automation things that are not available in the current system. So we feel like we have done the best possible job for the district in terms of selecting the proper tool to be the base for what we build on over the next few years. And so our recommendation really covers almost everything that was in the original request, and we're going to look for a few extra things as we go. Next slide. So what you have in front of you as a procurement request is a request for approximately $25 million. If you looked at this column here, you see there's some one-time costs of about $13 million. That is for the core system, for them to implement it, configure and implement it, and to work with us to make sure that we are looking at doing much better processes. We really, everybody, one of the core requests of everybody involved in this project and everybody outside this project was that we would be sure that we looked at processes and tried to streamline them. Then also, we had initially planned to do a 5-year procurement, but we got better pricing with a 7-year licensing agreement. So we thought it was smart to do a 7-year licensing agreement, so we got significantly better pricing with that. The grand total of that is that Oracle, AST Oracle, and the AST is their implementer, is going to get roughly $22 million, and then Kronos itself will get roughly 2.7. It is important to note a couple things about this slide, and that is the core Oracle pricing doesn't include the time and attendance. It doesn't include LMS or applicant tracking and recruiting, and it also does not include the hardware for the Kronos, like the clocks, because we're trying to figure out how we can do away with some of these things and not incur that extra purchase cost as well as maintenance costs. Next slide. So just to give you a quick overview of the totality of how we see this, we had made a fund balance of about $25 million to support this project. Oracle's 7-year contract award recommendation for Oracle and Kronos is roughly 24.6. But a key part of all this that's important to note is there are some key capability that we just could not find in any integrated system. We found it as separate systems for which we want to integrate, but it was not part of a core of any of those. Things like MBE and WMB tracking, legacy data archiving. Once we move to a new system, we have 20 years of data here, so we have to have a way to go back and look at prior year data more than just 3 years back or 5 years back. So we have to get that. We have to make sure that we enhance the talent acquisition and that we get a learning management system. All very, very key things that will be needed. In addition to that, one of the things most of you probably know a little bit about my background, but I've done these ERP systems a number of times. And one of the things that is always left out when we talk about costs is how you have to supplement and backfill your current staff. The fact that we're going to put the financial group and the human capital group under tremendous stress. We want their best people helping build this new system. So we'll have to take an extreme amount of the time for the best people to help define the new system, the future for the district. And that means we have to backfill for day-to-day operations to get those things done. The other thing that often gets missed is change management and training development. Change management and training is overlooked in almost every project of this type. We don't want to overlook it because it's crucial. I was sitting in the cabinet meeting yesterday, and it just so happened that the CEO made the comment that she's been through this herself. And one of the things people underestimate the difficulty of getting people to accept change, to manage that whole change process, to train them on how to do it, to train them again. And could not agree, the team could not agree more. So we estimated that, put that estimate in here together. So in combination over the next 7 years, we feel it's going to be roughly a $35 million project. What we're asking you to approve today is the initial $25 million core ERP implementation cost, which is the for Oracle, AST, and Kronos. Next slide. Next slide. And just a very quick overview, it's a really quick overview, which we can talk more about, is that the very first phase is the financial systems, which go from October, we hope to get started, to about January 23. And I know it looks weird to say phase 4 budget. It's just the way the vendor proposed it. But the budget actually starts halfway through financials and will end roughly the same time. What's not shown on this, which is my mistake, is then we also are paying for a support period after January of 23, where the vendors here are holding our hands, making sure that everything is working right, rather than walking out the door on day one. Then you're going to see that HC starts in roughly November of 22. It's when we start the human capital and payroll. Before that time, we will complete our selection of a learning management system, some enhancement to talent acquisition. We will be looking for an MBE, WMB package. So a number of other things prior to that. But then we'll start the HC implementation in November 22, and the final phase of that will be will end around roughly January 24. So I realized that was very fast. I was trying to be very cognizant of time, but I'm ready to take any questions that you have. We can skip over the slide. It was just talking about the benefits of what the staff will get. So we're good.
You have time, Chief Thomas, if you wanted to review it.
Oh, okay. Well, I know we're trying to get out here at 12:30, so I didn't want to go too far.
We have time if you find it to be very valuable for the public.
Well, let's go to that one last slide, because it is important that we talk about that one last slide. Yeah, the district-wide impact of this, which should not be underestimated. We're going to be going beyond implementing a new solution for the core financial and human capital. We're going to actually enhance significant areas: time and attendance, leave management, employee self-service, performance management, an area that we have heard lots of complaints about. The procurement process, I don't want to say we have lots of complaints about it, but all of us know that we want that to be smoother, less steps, to flow as fast as possible, because we operate at light speed around here, so we need things to be smoother. An area that we also get lots of complaints about is onboarding. We're trying to make sure that the onboarding process is as smooth as it possibly can, because as we talked earlier about teachers and learning, they hire a lot of people every year. And so the tiniest of hiccups in the onboarding process ripples through the whole system. So this new system that we're looking at has a much more complete, right from the very beginning when you start the interviewing and you start tracking the applicants, all the way through, we know they're starting next Wednesday, and what do we have be ready for when they walk in the door. So that's personally, as a new hire, I'm very excited about that part myself. And then the dashboards and the reporting. We realize that what you can see, that the trends that you can see, the things that are sort of hidden behind the cracks make a big difference. We've been doing a great deal of enhanced reporting during the pandemic, and it's been crucial because people ask questions about everything. How many kids are in school? What schools are in? How many buses are late? So all of this is part of the reporting and dashboard. Not necessarily everything is within this system, but the tools to do that. So that's the whole package that we purchased. Like I said, we went down, just to quickly summarize, we went through 8 different vendors who submitted, got down to 5, did the best 3. And when we did the best 3, what I don't say on here in the slide itself, but we pick the vendor, AST, that has done school systems, and who, when we evaluated their bid, one of the things we looked at was they really put in the things that say, I'm going to help you look at your processes, streamline your processes, and then implement new processes as opposed to trying to retrofit this system to old processes. That is absolutely critical to increasing the efficiency of the financial and human capital, and the whole school district is looking at those processes. And they really talked about and explained it, and some of their references talked about that work. So that's a big deal to us. Questions?
Commissioner Reed?
Yes, thank you. I guess the first, you made a great point about the fact that you need talent, a good pool of people and team of people to help you with this process. Page 20 shows like the project organization structure. Is that the team of young people and talented people that are going to help you push this forward for the next few years?
Page 20, I'm trying to get to. Oh, this was the team that helped us select the tools and that we're going to use, many of which will be part of the team. The hardest part of this whole project, quite honestly, is that we are asking HC, finance, and IT to give us the best people they have. And
Right.
That means that's a huge impact. But when you have a project like this and you don't put your best people on it, you don't get the best product. So I don't want to speak for, I'm going to let Chief Chris and Chris Jeremy talk about their individual people, but I know the technical people, yes, this will be, but not only did they select it, but they will also be part of the team that is implementing it.
So this is a good group of people to look at in terms of future leadership and talent.
Yes.
Absolutely. Just to jump in, because Chief Jones gave me the segue, but Commissioner Reed, you're absolutely right. The very people that were implicit in those 5,000 hours, often they're called SMEs, right? Yeah, they're subject matter experts as well as being managers and leaders. They have been a key part of this because of its importance. Right, we're on borrowed time with the old system, and we got 20 years out of it. And so we, finance and HC and IT, put our best people on the selection committee. When we had those in-depth vendor demonstrations, it was not a passive hit play and listen to a company say how great they are. It was show us how you do this, show us how you do that. What happens if this? What happens if that? I mean. And those will be the very same people who deal with the same vendors that they contributed to choosing when they put their money where their mouth is and start building the system to meet our needs. But yes, it's exactly right. And we will have to augment them, as Chief Jones indicates, because those folks will be 100% engaged with the ERP, or the integrated information system that Chief Jones likes to call it, for the next 20 years. And it's just, as good as those folks are, it is not possible for them to do their day job which are by definition all, a lot of the big ones, their payroll, their accounting, their talent management. It's just, so we will need to augment those blue chippers with other folks so that we can both build the new system and get our day-to-day jobs done as well. And if you hear a little bit of, tension in our voices, I think there is some, because it's not something that we can do an okay job on. We have to live up to the money that we've been given. We have to live up to what this can do. So far we're there, but it's partly why Chief Jones came in and saw that you've seen it in paperwork, commissioners, both as staff augmentation and sometimes called backfill, kind of the same thing, or called this other, it's all the same thing. What happens when the 24 key people across the organization are building the new ERP? We have to backfill all the day positions, and it will, over 7 years, run us into the millions of dollars for that backfill. We hope, we will only spend it as we go. It would be great if it was a little bit less, but we put in our high water mark estimate, and also to highlight this point, which is you can buy the best system out there, and if you don't dedicate the right intellectual horsepower to making it work, you've just got a very expensive non-functioning system.
You guys are asking for 25 million. We already have the 25, right?
Yes, exactly right, sir.
Okay.
Originally, it was put away in fund balance. No new funds are being requested. Over the next 7 years, we expect to be asking, either through future fund balance or other things, about an additional 10 million. But you're right. The money being asked for at next week's meeting has been set aside at the beginning of this process for this reason.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Reed, you always take my questions. Stop doing that. Commissioner Bondima?
No question right now. But if we're moving on to procurement, I'd like to ask a question before we start the procurement, in reference to procurement.
Okay, Commissioner Reed, you're done with this particular presentation?
Yeah, let me preempt my colleague. We guys, I have Chief Doughty on the phone right now, with us right now, and also have the other chiefs, and also Allison. Correct me on the air. I think we're in a bad place. We're going to go through procurement pretty soon. We just had CIP. CIP needs $66 million per year. I think that's a number. We also, I mean, you guys see the numbers. Grant Skinner is going to talk. We're going to ask for $73 million for prescriptions and dental. My point is, something's wrong here when the fact that working capital and capital needs are less than ancillary health benefits. I mean, I just see the path and the trend line. Doesn't look good for the system. So we can talk about that offline or another time, but there's a pretty bad mismatch when you're spending more in dental and prescriptions than you are in capital spending and working capital. Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay. Chief, well, first, Chief Thomas, thank you so much for the presentation as we transition to procurement.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was a segue to procurement. Were you looking? Did you want to wait for that procurement to come up? Did you want to preempt the? You're muted.
Oh, are you speaking to?
It's in the 16s. Yeah, we'll see it.
Okay, so you just kind of want to surface. You wanted to introduce it and resurface it when we get there. Got it.
I want people to think about it. Thank you.
Got it. I believe Ms. Wilson.
I did have something to say before procurement, just because we're introducing.
Well,
that's what I want to say.
Okay, let me just say hi to Ms. Wilson.
Okay.
Wilson, thank you for joining us. Commissioner Bondima?
Oh, good. I just want to say before we go into procurement, when we completed our last meeting in operations and throughout our whole presentation during operations, I just want to reiterate the fact that I'm greatly concerned and always concerned about minority contracts and all of the contracts. And I don't want to leave it again. Sometimes we talk about issues and then we never go back to them again. I want to make sure that when we talk about any of the procurement contracts, that we let the contractors know how critical it is for them to participate in the program. And if they don't, we need to put something in writing or somewhere where if it's not followed through, if they do not comply, what do we do with the issue? And I just want to say, and because we have a lot of procurement, we'll continue to have a lot, but we go back to the same question, and I never feel like I get good answers as to what we're doing about people who do not comply with the percentage of the minority participation. And that's just that's just a statement.
Was there a particular procurement that you wanted to highlight around that issue?
I wanted highlighted on all procurement items, that it applied to, because some procurements this doesn't apply to including minority contractors, but the ones that does and are supposed to and is included in their contract, if they do not comply, we need to know why, and they need to be penalized. And we talked about that before, but I just want to continue to add that until I see signs that we are penalizing these companies for not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. We give them contracts.
Absolutely.
If it's okay, I just want to make a quick comment. That is one of the modules that finance is looking at in the new procurement, minority business enterprise and women business enterprise. That was one of the hot buttons that they wanted to be able to track it. And even in our negotiations for the ERP, the vendors tried to negotiate less than what we specified, and we told them very clearly they have to meet the specification. We will help introduce them to minority contractors who can supplement the work that they do. We know they're the lead contractor, so they have to do some of the key stuff, but we will help introduce them because it is a requirement.
Thank you so much for saying that.
Chief Thomas, your team has done a really beautiful job at highlighting the MBE requirements around that particular project before you came. So I just wanted to note that as we are on the discussion. Commissioner Bondima, are you okay with moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Ms. Wilson.
Good afternoon. There are 12 items on the agenda today to review for procurement. The first one is from the Chief Financial Officer. It is our temporary employment staffing services. This is asking for an increase to a current contract of $12 million. So it's increasing from $6 million to $18 million. And this is largely driven by the use of this contract to supply the health and safety coordinators to all schools across the district as part of the COVID response.
Commissioner Bondima?
My hand was up at first, and then you answered the question before that I was getting ready to inquire. I would assume it has a lot to do with the COVID-19, the coronavirus, while we have to double the amount of funding in order to satisfy this. And you just answered it, so I'm good. Thank you.
For the health and safety coordinators. One thing I did, I was having a little bit of a mental block around the timeline here. Would we be retroactively approving this?
No, we haven't exceeded the limit of the original board approval. This is us proactively asking for the increase. It is us conservatively increasing to account for both the health and safety coordinators, as well as some of the other uses that have come up throughout the COVID pandemic that were not necessarily built into the original estimate for how much we needed in this type of support.
Got it. Thank you. I was having a little mental block there. Commissioner Reed, any questions?
Not on this one, no.
Okay, got it. To move forward.
The next item is from the Chief Information Technology Officer. It's with Verizon, and it is the telephone service contract for the district. It is a contract of approximately $1 million for July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. It also has one of my favorite acronyms ever of POTS, which is just plain old telephone service.
Okay, so this one definitely expired June 30th, 21. So how have we been operating for several months?
I mean, I would ask colleagues from the ITD office to potentially respond to that.
Hi, this is Chief Jones. I'm gonna let Director Elvis Tidd answer this question.
Hi, yeah, this is Elvis, Director for IT. We ride the state's contract, and the state's previous contract expired, so we had to wait for them to come up with a new contract, and then we will piggyback off that contract. So we had to wait for them.
So does the district have any implication? Are there any implications to the district for that delay? This delay in time from June 30th to when we vote on this?
Not really. I mean, we might be in a little bit of arrears, but we make the payment regularly. So I don't think that should be a negative impact to the district.
Yeah, and that's the key, I think, here. We make our payments regularly, and the contract will cover that. So it's not like we're not in danger of them cutting it off. We just, for legal reasons, we had to have the state's contract in place first before we could ride the state's contract.
Commissioner Reed, any questions on this?
No, thank you.
Thank you. We can move forward, Ms. Wilson.
The next item on the agenda is the board letter for the ERP software and implementation services that you just heard the presentation on. The estimated total amount of award is for $24,624,612.50, and it's a contract term from September 29th, 2021 through September 28th, 2028, so it's a 7-year contract.
Any questions? Commissioner Bondima, Commissioner Reed? No?
No.
No? We can move forward.
Which one are we talking?
That is 14.02.
Okay, I'm fine until 1501. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is also from the Chief Information Technology Officer. Is for the wide area networking related services contract. This is an increase in the total amount of the contract by $2 million, largely related to scheduling issues and delays.
Commissioner Bondima? Commissioner Reed? No?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay, move forward.
The next item is from the Chief Operating Officer. It's for the HVAC and mechanical systems response services. It's an increase of the annual on-call requirements contract from $36 million a year to $90 million a year annually. This is largely related to being prepared to be able to do additional spending related to ESSER dollars, as well as covering any potential interest that charter schools may have in leveraging those dollars for these types of services.
Commissioner Reed?
I think in terms of 1501 and 1502, I think it'd be good for this to be pulled for the board. And also because I think we all need to be educated. One, the gravity of the money, because it's going from 36 to 90 million, which is real. And the other thing is where, I guess both for 1 and 2, 1501 and 1502, where ESSER dollars end in regular money spending starts and begins. There's a lot of this is going to be ESSERs, but the question is, we need to know how much is ESSERs and how much is not ESSERs. Thank you.
And I'd also like to add, hi Blaine, thanks for joining. I'd also like to add, could you also speak to, it seems like they both have some overlap, so how they speak to each other, that would be really helpful as well.
Do you want to wait to the board, or want me to discuss some things now?
Now.
Okay. The 1501, as Jessica mentioned, is for the charters and the schools that were given the ESSER monies that are not in the city schools, as well as our schools, to provide HVAC upgrades of new equipment, such as cooling towers, install air conditioning, throughout their buildings where they may not have had it due exhaust and such. Now, that money based on the $36 million is, as you saw in the capital program, some projects are costing anywhere from $3 to $8 million for air conditioning. A cooling tower, just for example, at North Bend is approximately $98,000. So if we replace multiple cooling towers to support the overall systems, it gets very costly. So we're trying to go with it's a 3-year incremental increase because ESSER dollars are only identified for the first 3 years to spend. And there may be additional money, which I have not been told yet, but it is forthcoming possibly. But right now we want to anticipate to get the work done, the expenditures done with our current vendors, so we don't have to go to long-term bidding and get this work done for next year and the following year. Now, 1502 is for the MERV filters and air purifiers. Previously, we were using our requirement contractors to purchase filters, and we realized that we were getting, well, we knew because of the necessity and urgency that we had no other choice other than a mechanism to purchase them through the ventilation companies. But yet, when they purchased the products, they were putting a surcharge on top of the per their contract, they were putting on another surcharge for material being delivered to us. So when we would purchase large volumes and quantities of air filters, there may have been an extra charge of another $20,000, $30,000 paid to the vendor for putting the cash out to get our materials. So we just want to go directly to the manufacturer, who is one of the companies. Cosmo Air Purification is a direct manufacturer down in Landover to get the items, and then Cube Root and JF Fisher, Standard Medical and Total Filtration can supply us air filters and air scrubbers at a more reduced rate than their actual HVAC contracts. So we're taking steps as we learned at the beginning of the PPE. Everybody started scrambling around getting items. We learned and we decided to put out our own contract specifically for our future needs, so we wouldn't be in a dilemma where we could spend the money wisely and frugally. I'm sorry for that word, but anyway, more frugal and be more mindset with that in case there's any audits or anything to support the ESSER dollars coming to the district. So that's a little bit. If you need more information, I'll be happy to supply it, as well as supply it on the night of the board meeting.
That was great. Commissioner Reed, did you have any follow-up questions to that?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bondima?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you.
Item 15.03 is also from the Chief Operating Officer. It's the Amoresco contract. This is a contract increase of $642,545, and it is related to recognizing all of the guaranteed incentives within the contract, as well as incorporating the service and annual fees associated with the contract once the work has been completed.
Commissioner Bondima, any questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Reed?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is also from the Chief Operating Officer. It is roof replacement at Woodhome Pre-K to 8 school. The contract total amount is $2,707,650, and it is to provide a roof replacement.
Okay.
The next item is the HVAC control systems, the Metasys preventative maintenance and repair services from Johnston Controls. The total contract is just over $3 million and is a term from September 29th, 2021 through September 28th, 2026.
Commissioner Reed?
No.
Commissioner
Nothing here.
No.
No. Got it. Thanks.
The next item is from the Chief Human Capital Officer. It is for the Care First of Maryland Incorporation dental plan. It is extending and increasing the contract amount. The contract would be extended through December 31st, 2022.
Commissioner Reed?
It's good to have both Jeremy and Chris on the line. I looked at the numbers in terms of the growth. I guess based on my numbers, the dental costs have gone up 28%, then 22%, then 18%. Now by 23, it'll be 12%. So we've gone from, like, in 2018 from $17 million to 2023, it's going to be $41 million. I've seen nothing from an inflationary standpoint increase as much as the dental costs for the Baltimore City school system. This stuff is starting to scare me. And you're going to see the same thing with the Express Scripts in terms of prescriptions. What do you guys, I mean, what can we do? Because if salaries, benefits, retirement costs continue to escalate the way they are, what are we going to have for working capital spending and capital spending for the system from the internal standpoint? Scares me.
Commissioner Reed, my answer will probably be entirely predictable, and Chief Grant Skinner can probably leaven it with more facts, but I completely share your fear at the increased costs of such items. I know we work with outside consultants who are constantly doing market intelligence on potentially better configurations, potentially better deals, but there's no way to sugarcoat the 4, 5, 6, 7 times inflation rate increases in certain healthcare related costs, not just here, of course, but system-wide or market-wide. And as a percentage of our overall spend, it continues to go up. So all I can say is I share your concern about the trend and about the amounts, but I do know that for as long as I've been here and a lot longer, we have been absolutely trying to focus on controlling those costs. We've had about as much success as other major employers have. And I know Chief Grant Skinner came on camera and has more to say, but it is definitely on our radar screen of one of the massive cost drivers that we need to control before it swallows up our whole budget.
Thanks, Chris. Commissioner Reed, I guess I will start with the end of where Chief Doherty was speaking, and we talked about this briefly in our Operations Committee meeting back in April. And what I had highlighted at the time is the employer share versus the employee share of each of these benefits is negotiated. And I shared a slide of the very high percentage of an employer share that we have negotiated. So to make a change in this requires negotiation with our partners. And an example that I would give is with respect to our prescription drug plan. We did negotiate a change in the employee share, an increase in the employee share that was a couple of years ago for some of our unions. It was challenging to get to that point in negotiations where we would create that increase, even though it keeps us way below on the prescription drug side what most employers and most school districts are charging for the employee share. So I think that I accept the push here for us to figure out how to negotiate some changes to the actual structures of our plans, and that's what we have been trying to do, and we recognize the need to continue to do so. I will, I'm going to take from this before the board meeting next week a point just to make sure that we are clear about what the actual growth rates have been, because I know that in part here for prescription drugs, like some of these numbers incorporate rebates that we receive and some don't incorporate rebates, and the details of that are important for me and my team, because we actually have seen much lower increases than what other districts are experiencing, particularly on the prescription drug side in recent years. And I don't want that to get lost when we see that there are still increases in what we are asking for from a procurement side. So we could look back to see what we've had initial approval for in recent years, and then what the actual cost is to the district when we take out the employee share and take out the rebates that we receive. And it's a slightly better story than I think what you're taking away, even though the first point is essential, that we have to figure out a way to more appropriately balance the employer contribution and the employee contribution to healthcare, given that healthcare is an enormous cost for any organization.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute. You have a question?
I know I have a comment or a statement. I need for you to make note that I have to abstain from making comments on this particular 16.01.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Gant, please note that.
Got it.
Okay. Our last procurement.
So the last item on the agenda today is from the Chief of Schools. It's for Play on Sports. This contract is a little bit different from what you would normally see. This is getting board approval for the estimated total cost of the contract if we were to terminate the service early. So this is an example of proactively coming to the board to cover the potential of an expenditure. Although we don't anticipate that, this is only part of the contract where if we ended our relationship with Play on Sports early, we would owe basically what amounts to the installation cost for all of the equipment. So the total estimated contract amount for this is $72,000. The contract term is from June 15th, 2021 through June 14th, 2026.
So I think my question is, we already are using this service?
That I don't know. I don't know if anyone from the office is on to answer a question about whether or not they've already started or whether or not this reflects the pre-work for
Hello.
Getting.
I am from Office of Interscholastic Athletics. My name is Tara Seaton, and I'm the staff associate in that office. We have not started the contract. The contract, however, is predated because before we could even consider the contract, IT needed to check the vulnerability. I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied. The vulnerability of the Infinite Campus software, and make sure that it wasn't hackable. So we have one camera installed at PDC, which is not a site where a school is used, but when middle school sports starts, they will use that gym so that we could test the system and make sure it wouldn't be damaging to the system.
Okay, so then my question is, this is a subscription service. So who are we the buyers of the subscription, or are the larger community, they are the expected subscription purchasers?
The community purchases a subscription to view games. So what the plan is for all of the 18 schools that are overseen by our office, the school community would be able to purchase streaming subscriptions for families who are not comfortable being at large events because of COVID. In case the district decides that there will be no spectators for health reasons, should COVID mandate say that the athletes can be in the area, but spectators cannot be in the area. And also it will help reach families that have members that live out of state because they could purchase it. And the service would do revenue sharing with the district, which would be just like when we sell tickets to regular games.
So my follow-up to that question then is for funded source. So when the larger community purchases the subscription, where does that money go to?
Okay, so the company that is providing the services makes the majority of the profit, and we make a small profit, and it would go to athletics, and it would be used like as if we sold tickets to the community, and the money had to be used for athletic equipment and supplies, in addition to what we get as fair student funding. So it would be used the same as cash from an event.
Got it. Okay. Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Bondima? Nothing? Commissioner Reed?
No questions.
Fine,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Just a heads up, I'm going to pull this at the meeting.
Okay.
This needs to be highlighted. I can also anticipate the ERP being pulled.
Yes.
And I can anticipate 1502 being pulled as well.
Okay.
Mostly around what we've already discussed today, but those are things that also should be highlighted at the general meeting.
Okay.
We
want to
are
make sure that staff's available.
we are
Do I need to prepare a presentation for that?
from ending. Oh wait,
No.
Oh, yes, just and Joe or Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, there'll be I believe there'll be a full ERP presentation Tuesday as well, just for the members of the public.
I thought you were trying to mess up my on-time ending. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to today's meeting and for the extension of today's very full agenda. We are done on time with 30 seconds to spare. Have a great day, everyone.
Very good, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Madam Chair.